One. Hi, I'm investigative medium Laine Crosby. Welcome to Believe. I have no doubt that divine intervention introduced me to my very special guest today. She is a shaman who I feel fortunate to call a friend. Dr. Maggie Atkinson is also known as Shaman Stormcrow Hummingbird. She teaches art history and visual culture at Greenfield Campus Memorial University in Corner Brook, Newfoundland. She has abilities that support shamanic healing practices, and she's also a shamanic practitioner of Celtic heritage. She has advanced training with Shaman Martin Duffy of the Irish Centre for Shamanic Studies, with Shaman Two Birds of Anamcara in Inverness, Scotland, and individual training under the tutelage of the late shaman Jeanette McCullough. She continues to build her abilities by traveling to shamans of different traditions and practices as often as possible. She offers university-level courses on shamanic art, practice, and ceremony. In her role as shamanic practitioner, she often does healing, including soul retrieval, extraction, power retrieval, drum doctoring, psychopomp, and energy transmutation. Some of these things are new to me, so I'll be learning too with you today. I am happy to have Dr. Atkinson here for my first episode of Believe. I met Maggie a couple of months ago, and we worked together with a number of people who have come to us for help. I am so impressed with the work she does. She is truly gifted, and she has helped me in more ways that you can imagine. And I won't go into them today, but I'm very grateful for all her help. Welcome, Maggie. Thank you so much for coming today, talking to us.
Hi, Laine. It's lovely to be here. Thank you for inviting me. Wonderful to see you again.
Thank you. Can we start with you telling us a little bit about shamanism and what you do?
Well, I can talk about some of the characteristics of shamanic practices.
Okay.
Because it can be contentious in some cases because we have so many different varieties of the way the practice is performed, depending on where we are, from what background, from what cultural perspective. But I can tell you that even though there's no clear definition, there's a lot of really wonderful people writing about what it could be. And so these are some of the elements that I bring into some of my courses when I teach shamanic practices as an art historian. Wonderful writers like Michael Harner, an anthropologist who did the research in some of the traditional cultures in different places around the planet and on the earth, and wrote about how shamanic practices could be used in more Western cultures and how we could use it in a modern life, modern contemporary life. So it helped to make it more accessible to people who may not have the same kind of tradition or background as some of the more traditional indigenous peoples around the world. So Michael Harner's book, Cave and Cosmos, wonderful. Cave and Cosmos, Shamanic Encounters with Another Reality. One of the more accessible materials and books that you could access if you wanted to get information about shamanic practices. Yeah. So, but one of the major characteristics for me, for my practice, is an intentional change in my consciousness so that I can access different realms of consciousness. And that helps me to interact with spirits that will support my intention to create healing and wellness for individuals, sometimes for communities, and sometimes even for the environment.
Now, oh, I'm sorry.
I was just, so that's one of the more distinctive features of shamanic practice, is to actually travel, interact, and bring back information that supports healing for people who ask me for it.
I'm so impressed with the journeys that you have taken. I'm not used to doing this, or I didn't know what I was doing. And I know we have talked about journeys I have taken, and you've even met me there, and you've gone even way further than I could go, and come back and brought me incredible information that you had no way of knowing. Mm-hmm. And is that very common to start out with whatever practice you do in shamanism, is to take a journey on behalf of the other person?
Yeah, for my practice, generally for most practitioners that I've come in contact with, we do a preliminary, might be called a preliminary diagnostic sort of overview for an individual. So in my practice specifically, somebody will come to me or send an email or something and contact me in some way and just say, I ask them just to give me their first name and to say they need my help. And then I ask for permission, ask, may I do a preliminary diagnostic on your behalf? And so that's what I go into, an alternative realm or consciousness. And I travel to my guides, and my guides give me pertinent information to tell me what is going on in that individual's life and how I might support wellness for that person in their condition today. And I bring that back, and that will give me information about whether I can help an individual and how I might go about doing that. So in my practice, yes, preliminary journeys are extremely important for my ability to help and support healing for people. Yeah.
How did this start? How did you realize that you were a shaman?
Yes, that's interesting, because I'm Irish English heritage, as I'm Celtic, as you
Hey.
yes. But I grew up in a family of people who really saw spirit on a regular basis. It was never considered anything different or anything strange about it. And I think I was always a person who knew things. I had dreams, lucid dreams, and I often knew things before they were going to happen. But it was my daily life. It's how I functioned. My mother and my grandmother in particular both had abilities to travel outside their bodies. And that was also considered quite normal, So my grandmother in particular, my mother doesn't necessarily practice herself anymore, but my grandmother certainly did. And she would simply lie down on her couch and she would set an intention to go and help somebody up the street or needed help. And she would go, and then she would come back and we'd get home with our day. And so, she would have been considered, with those kinds of characteristics, she would have been considered shamanic, using the term to apply to somebody who can travel out of their body into different realms and support healing. So as I got a little older, I really kind of moved away from that because I was interested in doing other things. And I was in the military for 13 years. I studied art history. I went to school and, got my PhD. And so I was really not paying attention to those abilities that I had. Well, I guess my guides and spirit decided that it was about time I started to pay attention to those abilities. And so they started showing me things that were frightening for me at the time because I didn't understand them. And as a result of that, a friend of mine said, you need to go and call and contact a shaman. And of course, being Celtic Irish heritage, I didn't know what that actually meant. So I had to do a lot of research, and I found a really wonderful woman in Canada who said, well, she did this preliminary diagnostic journey on my behalf for me, and she could see things that I didn't know were part of my soul makeup, I guess. And so she asked me to come out to see her. And when I did, she told me that I had shamanic abilities and taught me how to use them. So that's when I discovered that I was shamanic in my nature. Yeah.
That's great. So when you do this, what are some of the healing practices?
Well, I can do practices. Soul retrieval is a major component of shamanic healing. Extractions, another major component of shamanic healing. I do psychopomp work, and I do energy transmutation. So those are some of the things that I'm able to do, and it works with the spirit body. But often, and most often, spirit body, the work that is done for the spirit body in alternative reality manifests in the material world or in the middle world, as a shaman would refer to it. Yeah.
So specifically, can you tell me what you mean by extraction?
So an extraction, when I do a preliminary journey, my guides will show me sometimes, they'll show me the aura of an individual, or they might show me, entities, energetic patterns that might be either stuck in the aura or become attached to the individual in some way. They can be many different entities. They can be just misplaced energy. They can be people who've passed over who haven't realized that they've died, that become stuck in an aura and don't realize they're there. Sometimes they can be less positive energetic patterns that need to be removed. So my guides will show me that needs to be removed. This person needs to be told that they've passed and you need to move them on. So that's an extraction, because, you know, you sometimes too, people walking down the street or in different spaces don't recognize the fact they may be soul stealing. And that's another component of shamanic practice. You know, you can do it with intention, or you can do it with no intention at all. If you're feeling a little weaker at one part of the day, or at one time in the week, you're feeling weak and somebody walks down the street and they've got lots of energy, and just automatically you might steal some of that energy. But that energy, because it's somebody else, doesn't support your wellness. And so my guides will show me, oh, that's a bit of soul stealing. You need to remove that and send it back to the person it belongs to. So those are some examples of extraction.
So that sounds like kind of what we worked on a couple of weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And just to share with everybody else, a woman had come to me and she said that she didn't want to tell me much, but she played with the Ouija board as a child, and she'd always had this, she said, it's a D. She didn't want to say demonic entity.
Right.
So I went and took a look, and it just growled at me. And I asked my guides, you know, what am I dealing with? This is not something low level. It's kind of mid-level here, it looks like. And people label, and we've talked about this, people label these demons all the time, you know. It's all their different energies, and they're malevolent. They could be positive, or they could be just of the earth, you know, like elemental. But this was pretty nasty. So I went to my go-to and said, look, I'm not going to talk to you on the phone, but I'm going to pray. And I called in a couple of priests, and the priest worked on it. And you went even further, and you took a journey there and saw what happened. So I was kind of watching the priest, and you saw a lot more that you told me about.
Yes. It can be very, you know, when you get support from the priest and other mediums and psychics like yourself, very powerful. Sometimes that energy actually can support a shaman like myself to go further, right? Because my guides will say, okay, so this is what's happening with this person. But this is what we've missed. So in my practice, they'll take me to a space and they'll say, okay, now this is what you really need to see. And for me, yes, I saw what was not necessarily a positive energetic pattern attached to that individual. And so I watched my guides and myself work together to remove it. And it was taken down into the earth. The practice of removing it was fascinating, because the earth, I have a African guide who comes through to me, just recently came through to me, and he does work with demonic removal. That's what he does. He does this kind of ceremonial work that he's showing me in my journeys as I continue to work with him. And so he showed me this thing being dragged back into the earth. And also I see light beings surrounding the individual to support healing from the time of birth of that child until the time that the child becomes an adult. So removing that's a transmutation of energy. And so that's a very visual and sense packed example of what a journey might look like for something like that. And we were able to remove that.
And I knew more about what was going on up front. All I said was the person's name and can you help? And you came back with all of this information of what was going on. What I saw, and then much more that you saw, and having it go back into the earth.
I've got wonderful guides.
So can you tell me a little bit about, so that's really interesting about extraction. Is power retrieval, does it work with that to give the person back their power?
Yes. Depending on individuals, every individual is different. That's why I do individual work with specific people. So my guides might show me that an individual, they may show me that a person has gone through particular traumas in their life. Some they remember, some they don't. And some people, their response to trauma can be very profound. Other people, not so much. So it's very individual in its nature and the way that we respond to that. So they'll show me something happening as a child, maybe at 4 or 5 years old. And at that time, something so profoundly traumatic that part of the soul said, oh my, we cannot deal with that and function in the middle world. So what I'll do is I'll take that pain, trauma, and I will take it away, and I will go away with it. But what happens then is when the trauma is over, often the soul part returns and integrates with the rest of the soul holistically. Sometimes it doesn't. And when it does that, it takes off, right? It takes a lot of the wonderful characteristics, artistic, creative, abilities to cope with what's happening in the material world now as you get older and grow into adults. It takes those characteristics away with it. Often too, that soul tear can attract things that are not so positive, like other people's energy that doesn't support your own. So the guides will show me that, and that's where I go and I retrieve that soul and I bring it back to the individual to make them more holistic. That's a soul retrieval.
And this is so interesting to me, because whenever there's a physical ailment, a problem, there's a spiritual reason, I guess you'd say.
Yeah.
And we even see this now with the last episode of Outlander that came out, and the horrible scene with Claire. I don't know if you've seen that, but she goes through a traumatic event, and what you see is her having dinner with everybody around her. Then she goes back to the event, and then she goes back to thinking about all the things that she loved. So she's trying to disassociate herself from the event. And I think that therapists see that, people who've just kind of disassociated. And when people have PTSD, they kind of disassociate. But there's more going on a spiritual level. And I think it's really hard to fix the physical unless you go and deal with the spiritual aspect of it.
That's been my understanding since I began this work some time ago. It's 10, 15 years now. I have to say that I was a bit of, I like proof, I like to see examples of, the work being done and being complete, and so my guides had to be very patient with me. So when I first began, they would show me very specific information, and then they would also show me the response of the individuals with whom I had worked. And so, I worked with individuals who had really difficult things going on in their lives. And then I'd see them grow and become well and do beautifully in their lives. And so that's why I'm still doing the work. So absolutely, even if you don't recall an incident, it can have a profound impact on the way that we experience our lives later on, even at birth, even at infants. Yeah.
Let me just clarify, when you do the work at that one time, do you see what the future could be, or are you saying that in the future you can sort of take a look at them and check to see that they're doing?
That's interesting. Actually, both are true. I have had experiences where I see people at different times in their lives, sometimes in the future, possibilities. Pardon me. That doesn't happen often, because often I work with something in the past in order to support the present and the future, because this work can have an impact not only on your ancestors as well, because it heals your ancestors through your healing, but also the people and those that come after. Right. So if I can heal an individual at a certain time in their life, the way that they respond in the world will have an impact on their descendants as well. So it's such a beautiful, it does have amazing spiritual impact in the way that we perform. But also in the middle world, when I actually talk with people, I've seen an individual who is being hounded by her mother's energy. Her mother was a Wiccan, and sending some pretty powerful negative energy and a lot of fear to this woman. And so she was having difficulty. She was seeing, medical people, and psychologists, and she was on medication. It just was becoming profoundly out of control for this woman. And so she came to see me. I thought, well, I can look. And so I did. And I saw, my guide showed me exactly what was going on. It was quite frightening, actually. When I went in, I worked with her. I went 3 times to see her to help. I had to do a lot of clearing. I had to do several soul retrievals, but I watched over time her reconnect with her family. I watched her grow. I watched her go to university. I watched her now. She's in a happy relationship with somebody. So I just watched her blossom in the real world as a result of that work. And that's why I still do the work, because it's, it's not an easy path to follow. And it's also kind of difficult when you speak with people who haven't experienced it and don't really understand it.
Yeah, and that's something that I really wanted to have the show to talk about, because, since my accident, my brain injury, and I lost my abilities, and I had to work very hard to get them back. And all these wonderful people and opportunities have been brought into my lives. You are one of those.
I'm pleased. Yeah.
And it's taught me a lot. And I'm a pretty pragmatic person.
Me too.
So this, I've had to experience a lot of this.
Yes.
Find out, and people will say, oh, I don't believe in ghosts or this or that, and until you really have the experience, until you're sitting in front of somebody going, your grandfather says you dropped your keys and down an elevator shaft yesterday and you ate chicken for unless you
constantly have to. Yes.
Right. You're only as good as your last time.
Exactly. It's true. It's not an easy path. And it's been painful in my own experience too. I've had to go through some painful, traumatic experience, as you have, in order to be able to even understand what people are experiencing, and to be able to listen to people and hear what they're saying, and also to be able to trust what I'm being told. That's been very difficult, because you have to tell people. I have one incident where I literally saw a plane coming in and landing on a tarmac, and I saw ambulances and people coming and taking this woman out of the and it was traumatic. And I thought, how am I going to tell this lady this? And I thought, well, I'm going to tell this lady this. So I did. I said this, and she said, that's exactly what happened. Yes, she had a child. The child was being born in the flight, and it was traumatic, and the whole thing. But it takes a leap of faith for somebody like me, who teaches at a university, to be able to do that, and say it. So you've got to put a lot of faith in your guides.
Yes, that is absolutely true.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I remember I had a dream for years, probably 30 years, maybe 25, 30 years. Anyway, I was in this elevator and I was falling. And this woman came to me, and it was probably 5 or 10 years ago now, and told me about her experience. And I was like, well, did the elevator look like this? And it was, overlooked the city, and it was in Hong Kong, and it was all this different stuff. And she's like, that was it. And once she said that was it, then I never had the dream again. It was a very scary dream.
Oh, that's right too. So, that's true. Yes.
I don't know if, was I planning? It was the future planned out. I was going to meet her one day, and we were going to come together, and this was going to help her deal with it. I don't know.
I know.
Deal with all of these questions too.
Yes.
Journeys. And one thing I wanted to ask you was about curses. People have asked me a lot, oh, I think I'm cursed. And a psychic has said, if you give me $100, I'll take the curse off. And run.
Mm-hmm. Run away. Yeah.
But then I thought about it in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
And we've talked about someone we worked on together that had ancestral history, that this darkness could have been passed down ancestrally. And I thought, well, if the person, felt like they were cursed and had all this negativity around them, then maybe that could be passed down. Do you think? I mean, how does that?
I have experienced that. Yes, I have seen that in some of my experiences and some of my shamanic practice, and shamanic cultures around the world. Yes, sometimes things can be passed down through the lineage, and often I've seen more than one case where an individual has taken on that kind of energy. It's almost like it's born into the DNA. And they are performing in the world with that energy that's not really theirs anymore. It's almost like an attachment in some ways. And I think that in some cases it's intentional, and others it's not. I don't think it's intentional. It's just that, for example, let's say, for example, we have alcoholism in the family, or we have abuse in the family. That can sometimes go through family lineages, and shamanic intervention can support wellness in that. Yes, I do think so. I think you have to be, yeah.
That is wonderful. So what is drum doctoring?
It's something that's not practiced all that much that I know of. That was a particular gift that was given to me by Jeanette McCullough. It's in its heritage. She got it from her teacher. It's something that's passed down. I don't know how many shamans actually work with it, but it originated in Tuva in Central Asia, And she became aware of it, and she only gifted it to particular people who worked with her. And I was one of the ones who she decided to teach it to. And really, it's a performance in which I use the drum around individuals in order to transmute, remove energy specifically. And sometimes it can work with people who are, because often, not often, I won't say that, but there are times when an individual has an attachment or is holding on to energetic material they don't need, sometimes unconsciously. And so much, how much you try to pull that off and pull it off, you know, they're used to having it. And so they keep on, they want to bring it back, you know, because their thought patterns or because they're used to having it in their lives, right? And the drum doctrine can sometimes help to sever that attachment for good. That's one of the uses for it anyway.
Now, and I might say the drumming might help change their vibration.
At times, yes. Yeah.
Because I have a couple of Himalayan singing bowls that I use.
Nice.
And
nice.
I use it with prayer, and it just sort of changes the vibration where I am.
Absolutely. That's another way, yes. And I drum around, and the guides will show me where to place the drum and what type of drum to use. So.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
Well, so what is Psychopomp?
Psychopomp. It's a method in which shamans will journey into the middle and upper worlds and sometimes lower worlds and find souls that don't necessarily know they passed and move them on. That's what that is. And
So,
sometime, sorry.
Yeah. I was going to ask you to define lower, middle, and upper worlds.
Oh, right. Okay. It's kind of it's a shamanic method by which to understand how a journey might manifest. So we call it, the tree of life. It's kind of like it's a mythology, but it also works in the world of journeys for shamanic practitioners. So the lower world would be a place of pristine beauty, where humanity hasn't necessarily imposed things like buildings and negativity and those kinds of things. It's where you meet with your power animals. It's where you can meet with your guides often. It's where you're able to communicate with nature and places because you're not encumbered by the physicality of the body. So that would be the lower world. And that's a very general explanation, but it's an idea.
Right.
Middle world is where we are all experiencing right now. The middle world is where we have, connections with some kinds of less positive energies. We have difficulties and illnesses we have to deal with, those kinds of, that's the middle world. That's where we are now. And then the upper world is that space where maybe we go when we passed. It's where we find our ancestors. It can be conceived of in different ways by different shamanic practitioners. But, they often talk about light beings of whom I've seen. Sometimes you can meet your guides in that space, although they also come to the lower world. So it's just a separation in a mythological way, perhaps, but also manifests in the way that I, as a shamanic practitioner, will work with gathering information to help and support other people.
Okay.
I hope that helps. It's not the easiest thing to try to describe.
Thank you. I've understood we've talked about the middle world a lot before, but not the lower world. And I just made the assumption that was where maybe negative entities resided.
Yes, a lot of people do. I am born Roman Catholic. And so, of course, a Roman Catholic, the lower worlds would be, description of hell, but not in the shamanic world. It's pristine, it's beautiful, it's safe. It's where you meet with your guides. It's where you gather information and make connections. Because, as a shamanic practitioner too, and I've experienced this myself, where you communicate literally with plants and roots, and they give you information. So that ability to be able to communicate with entities that are not human is a really profound experience for shamans, and one which I've benefited from and able to help other people with it. Yeah.
And so tell me again how this relates to Psychopomp and what you do there.
Well, for Psychopomp, I have done I do Psychopomp sometimes just on my own time. So what I might do is I might go and journey to the lower worlds and meet with my guides and say, this is a journey to look for souls who may find themselves trapped or soul parts, and just show them that they're here, explain what's happened, and then send them off. And so what my guides will do is they'll send me to different places in different realms on the planet, sometimes the middle world, sometimes the lower, wherever the soul part can become trapped. And I'll see these individuals and I will actually have conversations with them and then tell them and show them the portal and say, listen, this is where you need to be going. And often people come through and come and get them. I've seen that in my journeys. I can't speak for other shamans. That I can only speak from my own experience. And also too, I've done journeys for, I did one journey for a woman who worked in the seniors home. And she came to me, I think it was last year. And she was really upset. She was depressed and upset, and that wasn't her nature to be that way. And so she came to see me. And I thought, well, I did a journey. And sure enough, there was an elderly gentleman who had passed away 2 weeks before. And he had become enmeshed in her aura. And he didn't recognize it. So my guide showed me. And when he saw me, he was lovely, but he was also confused. Right. And I said, you're not where you're supposed to be. And he was, oh, I'm not, And so I just said no. And then his somebody in his family came through. So as soon as he recognized that's where he was, then off he went. And that was a Psychopomp. And within a week she was fine, because his emotions, his experience were interfering with her understanding of her own experiences. So
right.
That would be an example.
That makes sense. I don't know why it's called Psychopomp.
I'm not sure. I'd have to, I think it's Greek or something. I think it's a spirit movement or something. I don't know. I'm not sure. I could look it up, couldn't I?
Well, I end up doing that a lot on battlefields. You walk through a beautiful battlefield and then somebody's asking.
That's exactly right. I did the same thing. Yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's right. Mm-hmm. You told me about, oh gosh, the Vietnam.
It was in Vietnam, and it was and I think that too, that's one of the things about doing this work, as you may know, Laine, I'm sure you do, that, when you become involved with it, it also has a huge emotional impact on you. It certainly did with me, when I had no idea I was going to end up in this field. And I was looking at terrified men in full battle gear, coming out and looking at me. And when they realized that they were where they were, it was heartbreaking to see that, but it was also profoundly beautiful to see once they realized, oh, it's over, we can go home. And watching them leave was amazing. So, it's
wonderful.
It is.
It really hit me when you told me that they were crawling on the ground.
Yes.
It just broke my heart.
It was.
I tell everybody when I do lectures, I don't know why, but we have to ask for this, on behalf of them, for this to work out. And we can I send angels or other angelic beings to go and help. And I tell people, if you ever think about 9/11, just pray, because
absolutely,
souls still there that need to cross over, and ask for God to send to.
Yes.
Whoever needs to be there for them to see them and move on.
I was stunned. I had no idea. This is one of the earlier experiences. I had no idea that was possible. But, the more I do the work, the more our spirit tells me and teaches me, that it is possible. And I could feel their emotions and the terror and everything they went through. So, it was wonderful to be able to. And I think that for me, spirit puts me there in a space and says, okay, this is where you might be of some use. So that's helpful too. Yeah.
Well, I think we're learning now with this pandemic that we're all connected, and we're learning how much we're all connected.
Absolutely.
And
too bad it took a pandemic, but yeah.
I know. Yeah. It's terrible. But, you were talking about the energy and us all, being a part of that energy. And I've just started learning astrology. Well, I've read a lot of books and anything I can. And I didn't really understand what it was. But now I truly understand, as it is above, so it is below. But it's at that time, Rick Levine is wonderful, by the way. He's a great astrologer. And I've learned so much more through him than I can a lot of places, because he made me understand that all of the planets have their energies. And when we are born into this world, just like we have that one cell, when we're conceived, and that has
Right.
all of that energy that's coming passed down ancestrally.
Yes.
It's kind of like we come into this world and there's all this energy that's sort of imprinted by everything that's going on astrologically.
Absolutely.
And we're
Yeah.
just part of that. And that has influence and shows us, it doesn't tell us what we can do in life, but it shows us
No.
what opportunities might be.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
yeah. It's profoundly interconnected, isn't it? It really is. And it can have a profound impact on the way we experience our lives and the way that we interact with one another. And I'm often, it's kind of interesting too, when I see people who, they have certain manifestations in their lives and they want me, they say, oh, Maggie, this is going on in my life and I need you to help me with this. And then I go and do my journey. My guides show me, oh no, I want you to look at this. And it's something that happened when they were 3 or 4 or 10, and when I come back and I say to them, now, this is what we're going to fix. And sometimes they're upset too, because of course they say, well, this is what's happening now, and I say, but guides have shown me this. And so we heal that because it's connected to this. It's connected to what's happening now. And if we can sort this out, this will sort out. And that's what happens.
Right.
That's what happens.
Going
So
to
it shows that, yes, cause and effect. It shows that interconnection, doesn't it?
It really does.
Pardon
me. Now, there's another question that you talked about doing energy transmutation. Yeah. What is that?
That's just simply, well, when I was talking with you earlier about the individual who had a mom who was involved with things maybe she didn't necessarily want to be involved with or shouldn't, with people who aren't necessarily positive people. And so she was attracting energy that was becoming stuck and it wasn't supportive. Right. And so transmutation, it's just a simple way of asking energy to be transmuted from less positive, negative, or maybe even negative energy into life affirming and loving energy. So I can do that through meditation, I can do that through journeying, and I can do that through drumming. And so that's what it does. It just transforms and it detaches energy that is not necessarily sentient energy. It's just energy that's blocking or causing difficulties in life and doesn't need to be there. So that's what it is. Pretty simple, really.
My son is in cybersecurity in college. And when I got down to understanding what he was talking about, I understood there's just a lot of complicated acronyms just to mean just something kind of simple, some concept. And here there's different ways of discussing and talking about everything. But
right.
I think in essence, we all have, different ways of communicating what things are.
Yeah.
And the energy transmutation, it's great to have a name for it because I've never
Isn't it?
About it. But I've had myself bad days.
Yes.
And, I tell people, if you stump your toe and you're upset, then it sort of, keeps going. Because negativity attracts negativity and positivity attracts positive energy.
That's right.
So if you're attracting negative energy, things kind of, snowball and
they do
a little bit.
Yeah. Find yourself bogged down. And sometimes that you just, if you can, and guys will show that to me. They'll show me a person who's depressed and upset, and they're often surrounded by this. They'll show me visually, darker energy. Not necessarily that dark is equal to bad, but that's how they show it to me, so that I understand, oh, this needs to be removed. That's not part of that individual. That's something that happened that they're hanging on to or has become stuck there and it's accumulating. And that's how we just remove that so that that person can, see clearly.
Right.
Clearly. Yeah.
And you actually go there and do the work. I'll sit back and go, okay, dear Lord, please help this person, and you're in there with your shield going, get away.
Yes.
I'm so amazed by you.
Oh, thank you, Laine. Really? I'm not as amazed by me as you are, but I appreciate you.
Oh, well, you've certainly helped me and a lot of people I know.
I'm glad. Really am.
I would love to have you back.
I would love to come back.
More.
I would love to chat.
I would. I've got to read Cave and Cosmos. I'm going to do that right away.
Oh, good. It's a wonderful book. Yeah, very nice.
Michael Harner, Harner.
Harner, Cave and Cosmos. Yeah.
Cave and Cosmos. And we can talk some more. But is there anything else that you'd like to share today?
Just that I'm pleased to be here and to be given an opportunity to talk about the work and to share that it's such beautiful work that can really help support people to get well. And I'm just grateful to be here. Really, that's all I wanted to say.
Well, you do amazing work that helps a lot of people, and I just want to learn more and more about it. And I want to share. I want to share with everyone. Look what can be done out there.
Thanks so much, Laine. It's been such a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you. You too. And for everybody listening, your website is shamanstormcrow.com.
Yes.
shamanstormcrow.com.
I think there's a www in there somewhere. You know how terrible I am with my own website. I'm terrible at promoting myself. But I think it is www.shamanstormcrow.
Yep.
Okay.
That'll get you there.
Okay. Thanks, Laine.
Well, thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.